A video of this meeting is available for viewing on the city's website, stevenspoint.com/videos.
We will start this meeting with a call to order. Thanks for joining us with the Bicycle and Pedestrian Street Safety Commission. We have a roll call. Bill Fehrenbach.
Here.
Michael O'Mara.
Here.
Trevor Rourke here. Alder Kathy Dugan, absent. And we have 2 vacancies on the commission currently, which seem that they might get filled this month. Okay, with that, we'll move on to item 2, persons who wish to address the committee for up to 3 minutes on a non-agenda item. Is there anyone in the audience or the commission that has a non-agenda item for up to 3 minutes? Okay, I do probably pretty quick here. Just a reminder on shoveling. Not the easiest thing in the world, but please do shovel those sidewalks in a timely manner. Sometimes those snowplows will come after shoveling, which isn't the best thing in the world, but with constraints on budgets as well as staff, you might actually see a little snow berm near the curb cut or on the curb cut, basically the ramp that leads into the street 1 to 2 days after you shovel. So it's nice to just go back over there and check. Basically for decades, people with canes, using walkers, even using wheelchairs, have been struggling just to do basic, just to move about the city in a basic way. So any help we can give our neighbors, the better. So working together on shoveling is definitely what we aim to do, and there's also a city ordinance on the website if you have questions about more of the guidance on that, as well as any restrictions. All right. This is actually our new meeting time today, so second Thursday of the month at 3 p.m. So it's great to see a good turnout today, but in future meetings, we'll have it at the same date and time, second Thursday of the month, 3 p.m. Any other items from the audience or commission? Okay, seeing none, we shall move on to item 3. That is the report of the December 10th, 2019 meeting.
I move the minutes be approved as published.
Motion by Michael, is there a second?
I second.
Second by Bill. Any discussion on the minutes? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. None opposed. Motion carries. Item 4, review and discussion on Transportation Alternatives Program, or TAP Grant 2016 draft designs provided by the consultant Short Elliott Hendrickson Incorporated, also known as SEH. So we have some designs that were relayed to the commission via email. It's a very expansive document with 80-something pages, not something that easily fits into an agenda packet, but if a copy is needed, I think we can provide it as a city. So I don't know if you wanted to lead off with an introduction to, perfect timing, Scott.
All right, I do try.
Name and intro, please, address,
Yeah.
thanks.
So, as far as I'm Scott Button, Director of Public Works, but just there was introduced. In fact, we have a representative from Short Elliott Hendrickson here today, Jeremy Tomesh, who is leading the charge there for us, and he is really available, I think, to answer any questions you otherwise might have, provide just maybe a little bit of background and kind of history where we've otherwise been, and maybe some insights into where we're going as we try to wrap things up. I'll give one little spoiler out of what he'll probably present, is that we actually just spent about the last nearly 2 hours meeting with Dave Brett from the DOT, going through designs, had a very productive meeting with him. So I think from my perspective, we're sitting very well to finish things up and I think we're all getting excited, see some sun, although it's a little cold, get some markings put out and get this actually implemented. So with that, Jeremy, if you want to, up here, I don't know.
Sure,
if there's any specific
yeah, that'd be great if
questions.
you want to introduce anything, just maybe the status, the timeline, what we're looking at, how final this design is, and
Okay,
that'd be
yeah,
great.
certainly. Yeah, again, my name is Jeremy Tomish, Project Manager for SEH for the TAP grant project. As you know, we've been underway here with finalizing the design. We'll be having our second public informational meeting this spring. As Scott noted, we've been in communication with DOT as far as particularly to the connecting highways, making sure what is going to be out there works for both their needs and well as the commission's needs and well as the city's needs. So as far as the plan set and design goes, I guess at this point we would be just looking for some additional review comments from the commission. But if anybody had a chance to look at the plans and has any specific questions, I can answer them here. I can also be available other times too if needed.
Okay, great, thanks, Jeremy. Questions, comments from the commission? Go ahead.
My biggest question was Clark Street Bridge. I don't know if that, what went into that, any comments on Clark Street Bridge?
So Clark Street, all of West Clark to the west project limits is currently proposed to be a 3-lane section. So currently we're across the bridge, obviously a 4-lane with the raised median, but from that point all the way to the west project limits would go to a 3-lane section with marked bike lanes. So what we call as a lane diet. That isn't finalized yet. We're finishing up a traffic report at DOT's request, just to confirm that the lane reduction still gonna be able to carry the vehicles as needed, and then still make sure we do have the space as required for both the bikes, the center turn lane, and the through lane. So we're anticipating that to be approved though.
The bridge itself will have how many lanes?
Just 1 lane in each direction, so it's 2 lanes with marked bike lanes.
Sorry to interrupt, if you can speak closer to the mic, Bill, and other commissioners, that would help. Yeah, all right, cool. More questions for SEH on designs? Quick question here, so there's a number of buffered bike lanes which we haven't really seen in the city, which is going to be very nice for people that bike and walk as well as drive. So in the winter, obviously, you won't see the paint as well. Will there be plastic bollards? Is that in the budget or not? Not currently?
No.
Okay.
And sometimes that can be winter maintenance. It does make it a challenge to clear the roads in your non-northern climates. That's common, especially if you have like a counterflow to provide more of a louder bike lane, if you will. But that sometimes could be a challenge for winter maintenance with the bollard. So
Okay.
this project wasn't scoped or budgeted for that.
Okay. Did want to mention, looking through all designs, well, close to half of it. It was a lot of time to read through, but a lot of improvements have been made, and thank you for doing that.
I appreciate the feedback too as well from
Yeah.
everybody from the city, from you folks that have been working on it. So
Definitely. Quick question about, well, it might not be as quick, Centerpoint Drive. So the typical cross-section, so this is on page 2 of the design. From Union to 3rd, so you've got what you created is you go from headed west, a protected bike lane to an unprotected bike lane, and then back to a protected bike lane in order to accommodate street parking. Now, I'm an advocate for street parking right there, because if you increase more supply on the street, we're utilizing our streets better instead of taking up precious land. So it's great. I want to see parking there personally. The question is, why? So the bicyclist and pedestrians, those are 2 most vulnerable users of the street. So why go from protected to unprotected, then protected again when you can actually do a parking protected bike lane with hardly any additional cost? So I'm just curious why, if that's been discussed with DOT, Wisconsin Department of Transportation, or not.
I don't know, Scott, if you want to answer with regards to the history of the parking, but I'll let you.
Sure.
Yeah, it's just-
Yeah, I can answer, in part, all of that even, because the parking others came along with what is still always going to be the Lullaby development was a request of their part, which we feel we can accommodate them. So that brought about the parking from Union to Third. As far as how the bike lane works, it's still the industry standard not to put the parking between the traffic and biking, because it otherwise can hide the bicyclists behind there. So as everyone, both bicyclists and motor vehicles are traveling towards Third, if a vehicle were going to make a turn onto Third, they may not see the bicyclists there, and that would create a conflict we don't want to do. By bringing them, putting the cars to the curb and bringing the bicycles out to the road, says they're visible, and we eliminate that potential conflict or greatly reduce it. So that's still the industry standard for that approach, and that's why we've used that. That would actually fall along with the DOT's handbook for bike facility design.
Okay, so the confusion though lies in the transition as well as you actually create a new problem, which is the door zone. So everyone's familiar that rides a bicycle is familiar with the door zone. So if you're riding a bicycle in a bike lane and you got a car parked right next to you, people will open their door without looking, which most people do. It's very normal because you assume there's plenty of room to get out and exit your car. But if the bike lane line is right there, so it's a 7-foot parking lane, I believe. If the bike lane line is right there, that means if you're biking, you can bike within that line. And now to your left, as you're headed west, you've got a travel lane, one of the fastest in the city, separated between you and 4 inches. So my point is you're actually creating a new problem that doesn't have to exist if you have a parking protected bike lane.
And that conflict is, is going to exist. It definitely is, but it's still the standard approach to otherwise, to including parking and the bike lane is that we have it on Michigan, there south of Pat Street. We have it on North 2nd Street. We will be having, the same situation, with otherwise shares, on Clark Street, other areas and stuff. In every instance, that parking is going to be along the curb. I don't think that the transitions are going to create more of that. There's always the instance to that, even vehicles parking in any Sherrill, Prentice Street, for instance, as you're biking there, there's always going to be that potential conflict. I think that's more of an education that we others do. I don't know if everyone in the audience is familiar. The commission's probably heard of the I believe it's called the Dutch Reach, where you're otherwise looking for them. So instead of opening the door with your left hand like we typically do and don't do, reach around with your right hand to grab the door open, which puts your face to the mirror, so you're looking down behind you to see if there may be a bicycle coming. So very popular in Europe. That's really, I think, the approach to get there. But I don't think that the conflicts, when we're trying to compare them, would have us consider switching that around. So the parking, I believe, is still correctly placed on the curb.
Okay.
Just real quick, I want to clarify that width. So that 7 feet is to the flag. So you really got 9 to the face of the curb.
Okay.
So there does provide more space. Obviously, a car door still is going to potentially impede into that
Right.
bike lane. But to Scott's point, both education and obviously the why the parking is going there is probably a whole nother matter. But to provide that buffer, there's just not the space without taking another of the through lanes through that area, unfortunately. So.
Okay. On page 18, so right next to Ben Franklin Junior High, the grant was written to terminate, I think, right at Polk Street. And the TAP grant was written to include bike lanes up to Polk Street intersection. But it looks like in the design, they kind of taper off into Sharrows. So,
I'm sorry, I'll refer to this to Scott again on this.
Yeah.
maybe the DOT has already talked or,
Well, this actually doesn't become necessarily the DOT's issue as it does
Okay.
becomes the county's issue, because it's actually County
Oh.
Highway HH. So we need their permission to work within there.
okay.
To be honest with you, I'm not sure they're actually going to grant us permission to do this, at least at this time.
For when
so-
it merges, HH merges
To
with?
do any work south of Nebel Street of Riverview, at least at this time.
Okay.
I think part of it is going to be, I'm not sure within the bidding process, we will bid it as is, but I think we need to be prepared that we may have to just change order that portion of it out, pending that we can get there, because there will be additional need to do that, whether we can do that internally or whether we will have to contract with SCH to do the traffic analysis that the county would require. There's going to be added time and expense to do that. So it's put in there as it is, but to carry the bike lane all the way to Polk Street, we still need some sort of transition. We would still need the county to, give us the okay on that. So, the approach that we'd otherwise given SCH and what they had always done is to try to contain all of the improvements with the merge and everything that accounting for traffic within our jurisdiction, because of course that Polk would also transitions to the Village of Whiting. So we're trying to otherwise utilize that. So we need to work within our jurisdiction as well. So those are the issues that we're facing there.
Okay.
And that's kind of how it came out to be the way it is drawn now.
Has the county been addressed yet on
Yes,
this?
they have.
They have, okay. All right. Any response or no?
Which is exactly why I say I think it's unlikely they're going to
Okay.
give us permission to do it. Because I don't think that I think part of the issue is that it's, I know there's bike lanes coming up even from the south. Part of it, I think, was just kind of the DOT making that happen. I don't see that they're going to want to do this at a time without a formalized plan that basically would connect it all the way to back to business 51, I think is part of their goal, because they want to see a continuous plan for what this is, but now we're getting outside our jurisdiction, so.
Okay. Thank you for including that important info. Got a few other notes, but I figured this is probably a opportunity to submit through staff if there's additional concerns or questions.
Oh, estimate, yeah. Oh, sorry.
No, I was just mentioning, so unless there's other concerns or questions from the commission or the audience, we can submit those through staff, and they can get those through SEH. Go ahead.
Okay, sorry. Trevor, do you know what the original amount of the grant was, the total amount for construction? I don't have that with me, but I mean, I do got a estimate of probable cost at this point in time, and I guess
do.
just for a comparison.
As long as my computer works.
Oh, it's okay.
Come on.
But I can just still roughly kind of just go and see where we're sitting at things here today.
Okay.
I think it was in the upper 390s or something like that. But anyways, as it stands today, on the construction estimate, which includes removing existing markings, applying epoxy markings, that's whether it's your 4-inch lines, your 8-inch, your stop bars, turn arrows, and so forth, adding the signs, which is your poles, signs itself, contractor mobilization. You're going to have a cost for traffic control, right? They're going to have to be kind of shifting traffic around while they get stuff painted. We're looking at a cost right now of right around $450,000, which entails about 13 miles, center lane miles throughout the city. So just put it in perspective, just like your 4-inch edge lines, where I got over 100,000 linear feet of just that marking. So it adds up quick when you start covering this much area. I mean, there's some areas too, whether we've had some adjustments trying to utilize some of the existing lane markings and stuff to save costs. So, but I just wanted to make the commission, of course, made the city aware of that's where it's sitting at for today.
Okay. I don't know if it's a question for later, but is there any knowledge or how that difference came about, or if something was way off, Scott or Jeremy?
Yeah, when this
or is it really time?
Well,
It's just time.
and you get into the details, and the devil's in the details, right? You start looking at these intersections, and you add in the buffered lanes, and you're adding the sharrows, the symbols, and you start adding up all the actual quantities that are required. I mean, you just no fault in who put the estimate together. It's just when you get into the details, that's where all those things come to light. And
I think the original was about 391,000.
Yeah, and just that's probably already a 3-year-old estimate. So just take inflation, let's say even 3 to 5% a year. It's going to add to that as well. So.
Okay. Thank you.
And I
Scott?
can comment on just a little bit more of that. I think part of the other thing, there's two things in addition to, I think, just otherwise time and where we are right now versus however we're adjusted for inflation, but when an estimate was given and where we are now with the economy. But I think one thing you'll find as you've looked through there is there's been a number of actual upgrades to what has been done. We've been trying to maximize what it is, and I think we're still good, as an estimate here. I think we're still good with where we're at. I think we'll find out, but with the additional urban shoulders, that we put in where there was otherwise sharrows, and some of the additional intersection improvements that we did, because it wasn't just a matter of extending the bike lanes into the intersection, but because of the line shifts and stuff, we're basically redrawing, the intersection, which I don't think was all included in the budget, but adds up very quickly when we have to redo all the lane markings and such in intersections, because there's quite a few of them. So I think that's where some of the additional came in. I think if we broke it out, probably a considerable amount comes from the intersection repaints, the removals, in addition to the paint itself, adds up pretty quick. And I think when we get into it, we'll probably have to look to see what it is. And if we do end up somewhere over budget, I think we have some potential savings where we'll just have to utilize the existing markings and see how everything fits, together. Because some of them shift a little bit, maybe ultimately not enough that we have to concern ourselves with it. And we may be able to reuse the existing, turn lane markings and such, which right now are anticipated to be replaced. So I think we're actually in a very good spot.
Okay, great. Thank you. Any other questions or concerns for current draft design? Paula Dugan?
No concerns,
No
but
concerns?
I wanted to make a comment.
Sure, go ahead.
My district that I represent on the city council is District 8, and it's just a comment. I was so pleased to see how much District 8 is being considered, and we need a number of improvements, bicycle and pedestrian improvements, Stanley Street, Main Street, Green. Yeah, and I'm very happy with that.
All right, thank you. No other concerns or questions? Okay. Thank you, Jeremy. That leaves us to the next agenda item, number 5. Walter
If I
Street.
could, Trev, just
Oh,
real
sorry,
quick.
go
I
ahead,
guess,
Scott.
I would be looking at this point in time just to stay on schedule. If there isn't a fundamental issue related to what you've seen, if we would have then, because we need to start considering rolling in and getting
You need
ready
final
for bidding.
approval?
So yeah, we're actually looking to see that. So I know maybe you haven't had as much time as you'd like to, but hopefully you've looked at it enough to know if there's something wrong, because I think we've gotten through, and even they're meeting with the DOTs, and if I don't think there's a few things that need to be worked out with the DOT related
Okay.
to downtown. I think as far as outside the downtown area, I would say what we have there is good. I mean, it may just be, now we're talking about an adjustment of a sign,
Sure.
just confirming some of the, exactly how layout do we, need, we were talking even today about some of the lines where there's parking, do we double up the line, do we need the inside line or not, sort of things. Those are even minor things that could even be settled into the field if need be, we get there. But just otherwise making sure that we're good here, that we can then proceed to the finish line, I guess.
Okay.
So,
So with that, is there a motion
I
to,
would move that we approve the plans that have been submitted.
is there a second?
I will second.
Kathy, second. Any discussion on the plans that have been submitted to the commission?
I think they look much better than the preliminary plans, and I think that we can get a quality product. Oh, I think the plans that have been submitted are much better than the initial plans, and I think we can get a quality product out of them. The plan never has everything in it, but I think with decent field engineering, we'll get a good job.
Any other discussion? All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
No disapproval, okay. No abstentions, all motion carries. All right, thank you, Jeremy and Scott, and Joe, of course. Moving on to item 5, Walter Street bicycle and pedestrian improvements. Scott, did you want to kick this one off?
I will kick this one off as well. So, as otherwise we were, because I think it was otherwise back in the spring, we were talking about kind of our approach to do things. We'd identified that we wanted to include what we felt was the reasonable, but of course, the safest alternative to dealing with pedestrian and bicycle accommodations there. especially given the school, the Urbanic school, and school-age children being a demographic that definitely we need to be concerned with. So, and I know part of that was hinging on whether the engineering would work. It took us a little while to get through it. In fact, we still have a couple of little hiccups we're working through, but we're confident we'll get that all sorted out. So we otherwise came up with, as we had otherwise originally had talked about, the bicycle path on the north of Walter Street and sidewalk on the south. It took us considerably longer to get through the engineering than we anticipated. And ultimately, as a result of that, what that otherwise does is delay when we get out to the people there to tell them what's going on. If we aren't sure yet, we don't want to, poke the bees and stuff unless we know that there's honey. So it took a longer time. And as you can otherwise understand, is in most cases, that's quite a shock to people to come in to identify that this significant change is going to happen, and there's a considerable cost even associated with doing that. When you haven't necessarily felt that you had an opportunity to come to a public meeting like this and express, your opinion on the matter and whatnot. So I guess the concern talking with Alder Kneebone, who may otherwise speak, and sitting there behind me as well, and probably has more insights to that, and she and I have talked a little bit. So, the idea would be just to present to you, and that since it's beyond just the individuals there, regarding the possibility the path on the north get installed with the project, but maybe postponing the sidewalk south just to at least allow an opportunity for residents to prepare themselves for that installation. Haven't gotten through, in other words, the entire estimate of what it would be. There would be a slight increase in cost, I'm sure, related to the sidewalk being a separate project than that. One of the things we would also do with this is try to even expand a little bit on what we were thinking. And part of that, and the reason there's plan sets included in your packet, is not just to show where the sidewalk, I think everyone can envision that, but more so just the most important part of it, I think, is exactly what's happening on Wildwood. And if you look at a little bit on Wildwood, you see all the driveways are being redone. And the reason for that is because although we're not anticipating putting in that portion of sidewalk at the moment, we are prepping all the driveways such that in the future, all we need to do is basically connect the links in between. So the idea here would be much the same way. We would address all their driveways now, get that taken care of, that part of it. And then the idea would be is if we do this, and we'd have to decide on what that delay, if at all, would be. And I definitely want to keep it something in the near term. The farther down the road, the more likely other things start to interfere and people forget. And I don't want it to slip, because I think it is vitally important that it be installed. But I can't otherwise understand people's perspectives of being prepared for what we're asking to do that. But then what we would look to do is do that sort of approach on Walter Street, prep all the driveways so they'd be ready, so we could just connect the links before. Then in the future, when we come in to do that, be it a year or two, we'd also pick up Wildwood at that time. So we would include that as a larger sidewalk project.
So can I ask a quick question about
Absolutely.
that? That'll help frame the discussion. So this is a resurfacing project, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so a multi-use path on the north side, as previously discussed, would be part of the project bid.
Correct.
So if it's excluded, if the south side sidewalk is excluded from the project, it'll be a completely separate project in the future, but it may be assessed per property, or would it be?
It would still be
different-
assessed,
It would still
because
be
that's our current
assessed.
policy.
Yeah,
So the
it is.
sidewalk would still be assessed.
Okay.
What we'd be, and the delay would just allow those individuals, more opportunity if they wanted to plead the case. If this commission or the council would otherwise want to change, they would at least give them opportunity. They could at least have more opportunity to argue their points, as they should be otherwise allowed, as well as just to start saving, the money to do that in anticipation that it is going to come, along. Because otherwise you're being told, now and say later this year, we're going to send you a bill for $2,000. I know I don't have $2,000 laying around just, waiting for such a bill to come along to do that. So it's really just trying to compromise with them, saying that, I would otherwise say that, yes, we're committed to putting in the sidewalk. The idea is that we're at least listening enough to understand if nothing else, the financial implications of what it is, and just be cognizant of that, and be willing to work with the individuals there on that aspect of it.
Further questions, Commissioner?
Yeah, and I wanted to say the same. This is an opportunity for people to think about it ahead and either save money or also realize that they can pay in installments. I think that's accurate for.
Yeah, and I forget what the total term is with that, but yeah, there's, interest repayment, there are,
yeah.
something like that. And I also think it's.
3 different payments, I think, to the treasurer.
Right.
To call the
And
treasurer.
I guess just one last comment even too, like I said, to delay is something that, but the idea is not to, of course, change ultimately what we're doing. And I think it's important that with the school that we do need to ensure that we provide these facilities.
Right.
And I think even along there, it says, all they're doing, in your district, Washington School, we're doing a
Same
separate
thing.
sidewalk, there's, for exactly the same reasons.
Exactly.
It's that there's the school there, we have school-age children, walking there, we need to provide for their safety. So we're installing sidewalk there. They probably had, honestly though, I have to say there were a couple of them that were surprised as things morphed at the end, but for the most part, those individuals had been given some notice ahead of time that this were coming. They still wanted to voice their opinion and argue with it, but they were given those opportunities, which I'm not sure that everyone on Walter Street has been given that opportunity. Same, and that's really where I'm coming from. I'm not trying to take a side either way. I'm trying to be aware of, kind of the reality of what's happening in their lives and take some responsibility to say that it took us longer to get to where we were hoping to get get that necessarily out there so that they had that opportunity to voice their opinions and prepare. But at the same time saying it's important, and I'm not backing down to say we need to change anything. As far as I'm concerned, sidewalk needs to go in.
Okay, question about financing. So is there, it's probably too early, is there any preliminary estimate on the difference in cost? Sorry,
That's outside our purview.
is it?
Yes, finance is not under the purview of this department, of this commission.
Okay. I was just trying to educate
Yeah,
the
and as I
residents.
said before, I said we haven't
you could
quite-
ask them, but
yeah,
sure.
we will not take, we can't take any action about finance.
Okay, yeah.
It's
Wasn't
outside our
planning-
charge.
Right, wasn't planning to take action, but.
Yes.
Thank you.
But it's important for us to make that clear. We're not going to talk about whether it's going to be specially assessed or not. We will talk about what the physical thing is going to be.
Correct, yeah, and it's sort of like that. So we'd otherwise talked about, basically the timing of which was understood to be this year. So the question is can we adjust, the question is, are you comfortable adjusting the timing of when this improvement is installed?
Well, I would see no problem with adjusting the time, but I'm just, don't want anyone to think that we have any control at all over the levying of special assessments.
Right.
Right. Just to clarify, the reason I asked the question was.
Yes, I understood.
Okay, thank you.
I have some of the same concerns. Mary Kneebone, District 7 Alder. This whole idea came out of a neighborhood meeting at Bannock Elementary early in my first term. There was a concern that the street wasn't safe for kids that wanted to walk or parents that wanted to walk with their kids. Scott Schatzsnyder was the Public Works Director at the time and thought that it would be relatively easy just to put a walking path on the north side. But as they started to look at the roadway, it became evident that it needed a lot more work and couldn't be something simple. So the engineering evolved, and we've come to this point. It is part of the Safe Routes to School. I know there are at least 2 kids on the east side of Burlesky that walk to school because I see them coming home sometimes. I see people walking their dogs on that street in the neighborhood and just walking of an evening in the summertime. It's a fairly well-traveled street. But this way, I think that we need ultimately to have sidewalks. The ultimate goal is to link the entire city with sidewalks. And I suspect that the next link out there will be running it right down in front of my house. And I will be paying whatever that assessment is. The only issue I have with the cost is if we delay the sidewalk a year, how much more will the assessment be? Because I would not want to see it cost any more than it has to. And I don't know, I think that may be just the cost of doing business from year to year with road construction and sidewalk. But We did delay some sidewalks over by Washington School this year
We did, we negotiated that.
and rearranged them a little bit. So I think that may be other than Bannock, the last school that doesn't have sidewalks around. So this continues the bike pedestrian, or the Safe Routes to School program. If we can do everything but put in the sidewalks for a year, that gives folks an opportunity to plan and an opportunity to address the whole council next week, should they disagree. So that's kind of where we are. So this has been in the works for about 4 years.
You know, if you do a freestanding sidewalk contract, you get better prices than you do if it's a sub to the American Asphalt or whoever's doing it.
Well,
And so you may actually have some savings to having it in a subsequent year.
I'll let the engineers, the professionals figure
to
that
that.
out, but I'm available if anybody has any questions. But it's been a long time in the process, and the engineering's taken a long time, but it's something that there is a need for, and it's something that this council has been committed to for several years. So it's not a matter of not doing it, it's maybe just giving people a little extra time to prepare, so.
Thanks, Alderman Abel. Scott, I don't know if you wanted to speak to that. A couple of questions about
Yeah,
cost.
especially with cost. And that is always a good question, because we don't know who the subs otherwise would be. When it comes to, and of course, I just can't give any guarantee. If we were basically bidding them right now, I would definitely agree, Commissioner O'Meara, Robolowski gives us prices that we just don't see anyplace else. And,
Right.
if it wasn't for the simple fact that we work with them regularly, and we know they do the quality work, we would probably throw them out and consider them irresponsible, because how can they be that cheap? But they
Don't
know
say that.
exactly what we want, and they do what we need, and we utilize them, for that. So it is, and I think the other part too is, as I mentioned before, we would be looking to even expand upon, the Walter Street part to make sure that the economies of scale are there, such that we would get a good bid price. So I would, I can't say exactly what it would be, and I can't give any guarantee. I just don't think it would be, I wouldn't consider it something, in my opinion, to be substantial, either way. It could be cheaper, it could be more expensive, but I don't think it would be something substantial as just to say, we should take this option off the table. I think it's comparable enough that it's worth considering.
Thank you. Are there others in the audience who have questions or comments? Yes, go ahead. Name and address for the record, please.
My name is Mark Klein, 5473 Walter Street. When we were at the Bannock meeting, we were told that they were going to put this in. There was no discussion about a sidewalk. There was just a discussion about a multi-purpose lane that would be on the north side of Walter Street. Now, so many years later, we have a sidewalk on the south and we have a northbound bike lane. Who decided this? We had no input on this. And what happened to the stop sign, or the stop sign on Wildwood and Walter Street to stop traffic? People right now have a free line all the way from Brolesky to Bannock. I've seen them go 35, 40 miles an hour. That's ridiculous. And you want kids crossing over from the bike path to sidewalks on the south side when Bannock is on the south side of Walter Street? That makes no sense. Keep the sidewalk or whatever you're going to put on the side of the school, period. There's less driveways. You know how many driveways there are on Walter Street on the south side versus the north side? It makes no sense. It's just an added accident-prone area, period. And that's my comments.
Thank you.
Well, the one thing about having a sidewalk, having it on both sides when you're approaching a school is that the children will use it, but they're going to be able to stay on that sidewalk until they get to a crossing guard. And they will be instructed to do so. Right now, they're all crossing it. Every child who lives on the other side of the street crosses the street now, and they do it at all different places. If you have a defined sidewalk and you have crossing guards, they will choose to park there.
Okay, if we could have
Yes.
order, please.
That's fine.
Yep, thank you. So to quickly answer a question as well, the last year, I believe, was it last year that Walter Street was brought up to this commission, or was it 2 years ago? I can't recall.
I would have said it was just last year in the spring, when we were thinking about going through the preliminary typical sections, such and how we wanted the road to look. So, I don't know exactly, I would have said it was maybe June of last year.
Okay. So June of last year, the project was brought to the commission advice, and we brought forward a recommendation to have sidewalks on the south side because it pertains to the Safe Routes to School plan as well as the bicycle pedestrian plan that the county and the city have approved years back. Before you go again, is there another person that wants to speak? Go ahead again, sir.
Okay, so.
Sorry, you have to go up to the mic.
So you said that there was a meeting that was held when?
You said, director said it was June or so of last
So
year?
why is us as owners, why we weren't notified of this? We have to pay for this. We're getting no benefit of this. It's gonna cost us $2,000 out of our pocket. But do we get any benefit out of this? No. So why weren't we included in the decisions? Period.
Well, as a public meeting, it was open to everyone. It was noticed, just like all public meetings.
But we weren't sent any place cards, any postcards in the mail, like we were sent with this meeting, with the developmental, where everything was just plain done.
Right, I think that's because, correct me if I'm wrong, Director, because the plans were never approved until now they're getting close to approval. I don't know if that is accurate.
Okay, so is that accurate?
That is accurate. Really going all the way back to the point that Chairman Rourke made as far as the public meeting, that's where we notice those things. Even if they have implications, I'm not aware ever in history that just because we started to talk about a street that we've ever notified things, even if there were special assessments to be made. And unfortunately, it's just part of, our civic duty as, residents to hopefully pay attention to those things as they're posted and to see what it is, and not so much that we need to come and notify each individual homeowner or business about something that may take place to do that. So up until we know something is taking place, we don't generally do that. We rely on people to pay attention to everywhere the public meeting is noticed and see what it is. Until we have an actual meeting involved, as we did for the public informational meeting, we did that because this can go all the way back to the creation and acceptance of the countywide plan, which identified the sidewalks, which, would have been another opportunity to voice an opinion back in 2014. That decision to put sidewalks in was made back then when it was adopted in 2014. That decision to put sidewalks in wasn't made last June. It was just essentially accepted that was, how we're going to do with the bike path. The sidewalks are actually shown in the plan, and we're just, following the plan. And this commission is just to do here to make sure we are implementing, or if we are making changes, we can fit in what was working within the plan, and that's what we went, forward with. So I think there were many opportunities in the past to, get any changes in, and now we're just moving forward because we are into the engineering. We actually have something concrete to share, which is why we sent out the notices to share those plans we have.
So right now,
Thank you.
is it a done deal or is it still being voted on?
So I don't know if we, for this discussion, sorry?
Well, it hasn't been voted on yet,
Hasn't been voted on yet, so it is
and,
not.
and this body will not give the approval. The Board of Public Works and the City Council are the ultimate arbiters.
Okay.
We are the Bicycle and Pedestrian Street Safety Commission, and we advise the Board of Public Works and the Common Council and the Plan Commission sometimes on what the concerns are from the point of view of a pedestrian or a bicyclist.
Okay, so if it's
So we're set up as
pedestrian-
an advocacy group for those two groups.
If it's pedestrian and bicyclists you're concerned about, why do we as property owners have to pay for that?
That is a good question, and that is a
That's a
public,
good question.
that is a public policy question that's throughout the whole country.
Right, so we don't get the benefit, but we had to pay for
Oh,
it?
you do have a benefit.
There's a lot of
You have a
benefits,
benefit,
yeah.
yeah.
Of $1,800?
Yeah.
in front of our road.
Yeah, if you have little kids that are playing on their Hot Wheels, it's better that they're playing in front of your,
What I am
on the
concerned
sidewalk
about
than in the
is-
street.
I'm concerned about people backing up out of their driveway on the south side, not looking, and there's little kids there, and they get run over.
And
That's what I'm concerned about.
There's also the question of, does that concern exist today, right now?
Yes, it
If there's
does.
kids on
But
that
there'll be
street?
more with sidewalks on that side, because there's a lot more driveways on that side than there is on the north side.
Right,
That's my concern.
and that's understandable, because there's more driveways, as
Why
you
I can't
said.
understand why the sidewalk is on the south side and not on the north side.
Well, it's proposed as both.
Yeah.
Multi-use path as well
Multi-use
as.
path
Right.
on one
So
side and
if it's a
sidewalk on the other.
multi-use path, then why have the sidewalks on the south side at all?
Why do we have sidewalks on both sides of Main Street? The
I don't
same
know.
reason.
Because there's,
Oh, why?
Because
Yep.
there's a pedestrian demand on both sides. There's a pedestrian demand on the south side as well as the north side. And whenever you have, and I'm speaking as an engineer who's worked in pedestrian issues, everybody who wants to get to one side or the other is going to cross. They're either going to cross at a crossing or they're going to cross someplace else.
Right, but if there's no
And if there-
sidewalk there at all,
Then they'll cross in the middle of the street or any place. If you have a sidewalk, they will, now, there is a lunatic fringe that will cross any place.
Right.
That's not what you're designing for. But if people have a defined place where the crossings are, the grand majority of them will cross there. And you're providing that if you put in a sidewalk. If you don't have one, you have chaos.
right, but my question to you is why is it on the south side, not on the north side, where it's the side of the
It has to be on both sides,
on both sides?
yes.
But you have a bicycle path on the south side, which is a heck of a lot cheaper than the sidewalk on the south side. So why not have both?
Bicycles
bicycle
and
paths?
pedestrians aren't all that compatible. It'll probably be lots safer for pedestrians to be on the sidewalk and the bicycles to be on the bike path.
So how are you going to keep people that are walking from going on the bike path and
People
vice
make
versa?
sensible decisions, and they do.
You're talking about.
5-year-olds make sensible decisions.
Grade school kids?
Yes, they do.
depends. I have a 7-year-old, so all depends on the
yeah.
day.
Yes, but, and really, it isn't the little kids who get in pedestrian accidents. It's usually children that are 6th grade and above. Below 6th grade, they're much more cautious.
I just am upset because when this was all started, we were just gonna have a pedestrian path on the north side, and that was it. And I was fine and dandy with that because we do need something there, but I don't think we need it on both sides.
Well, yeah, and I can respect your feeling, and it's the reason these things change. Have you ever remodeled a house? Things change during design.
Not mine, when I design it, I design it for life.
Well, then, I think you're unique.
'Cause I know what I
Are
want.
there, thank you.
Thank you.
Are there other people in the audience that have questions or concerns, comments? Yes, go ahead. Name and address, please.
Mary McCarran, 900 Walter Street. I'm sorry, Wildwood Drive. I'm affected by Walter Street. Can you tell me, I think somebody made mention about notification, and where can I find those notifications for any future discussions? I don't subscribe to the Stevens Point Journal.
Sure, if it was a city meeting, whether it's city council or Public Works, which it references all the streets throughout the city, or even this commission here, they're announced on the city website. You can actually sign up for their automatic emails every time an agenda goes live and gets noticed. Very helpful. I sign up for all those. You could also see the Finance Committee, Plan Commission, et cetera, a lot of committees and commissions. It also goes, I think you did mention the Journal or the Gazette potentially gets noticed,
The
is that
Gazette
correct?
gets it, yeah.
Still gets it,
Our
okay.
notices, yeah.
And I believe, I don't know if there's Facebook posts as well. Not everybody uses that, but if you're on social media,
Absolutely not.
okay, and that's okay. I respect that greatly.
Okay, so my question is I did receive the notification about the proposed bike path and pedestrian path.
Okay.
And it didn't say at that point, I think the letter, I did not bring it with me, perhaps. No, it talked about pedestrian paths, and so there was absolutely no mention of sidewalk until I received a phone call from a neighbor informing me. So I'm not sure how that works as far as any articles, codes, or statutes.
Okay.
As far as requirements, which
So, thank you for bringing that to our attention. I don't know, Scott, can you speak to that? Because I'm not aware of the letter, what the date is, and who sent it. Do you have that letter in?
Yeah, it's got to go with the letter. Because, yeah, I mean,
Thank you.
instead of trying to do that, we don't usually take the time to put every little bit about it, so we usually use things as far as utility improvements, pedestrian and bicycle improvements, roadway improvements.
just
We
general.
don't generally break down on what it is, because we're not writing the letter as if to say, don't bother coming to the meeting, it's all here. We're telling you that there are things to discuss, and if you want to find out more, please come to the meeting and we'll give you the details related to this. So it's difficult to put in there that satisfies everybody, there, depending upon the project. So it's really an invite. Hopefully, we're getting people to want to come, to there. We can always use different wording. I'm not sure we'll always capture in every instance what it is that may be the trigger point for, for everybody on that time. Because sometimes it's not the sidewalk issues, it's, stormwater related issues, and, they don't understand or what it is. So it's we use similar language for most of our notices.
Yes.
Lots of details go
Yeah.
into
And
any of
then
these plans. Yeah.
As far as the sidewalk is going there, the sidewalk noise going, the only thing that I'm aware of that is actually a requirement as far as the sidewalk, which is related to the special assessment, is just the preliminary resolution. We have to have pass a preliminary resolution, which will actually, see, I think this one will probably be next month. I think sidewalk continuation is this month. And there'll be a preliminary resolution, and then there will be a final resolution passed, at which time you will get another notice. The city has to send out notices prior to that. There'll be a public meeting held at the council meeting when that resolution is passed. But otherwise, between that, and even with the preliminary resolution, I'm not aware that there's a requirement of notification to that. So up until the final resolution is really the only legal notice, and that's only related to the assessment that would otherwise be required.
Thank you.
I understand a letter can't satisfy everyone. If someone doesn't think putting sidewalks in front of your home is not important, I think to tell me that they're seal coating a road, it's important to my new vehicle. But that is a seal coating letter, no notification about sidewalks. I respectfully disagree with the position as far as importance and how it's prioritized. So the other question I have is, if there's the pedestrian path on the north side, why can't there be a pedestrian path on the south side as well?
So just to clarify, I believe there's a multi-use path planned, so pedestrians and bicyclists can use the north side, and then a standard sidewalk planned for the south side, just for pedestrians.
Okay.
Obviously, in this city and cities across the country, kids will use sidewalks while riding their bikes because it is safer for kids. So it's still going to be considered a sidewalk and graded as such on the south side. So concrete, squares, et cetera, et cetera.
Not sure if I quite follow you, but.
Sure.
So,
10-foot asphalt on the.
Yeah, so the multi-use path, sorry,
Multi is 10 feet of asphalt, and it's designed so that people can safely traverse it in a bicycle. Sidewalks are built for pedestrians, and except that we have an ordinance, in Stevens Point, that allows people to use the sidewalk to ride a bicycle on, the rest of the state of Wisconsin, for the most part, it's illegal to ride a bicycle on a sidewalk.
so if there are approximately 17 driveways on the south side versus 2, maybe 3 that would be impacted on the north side, why wouldn't a person consider putting the sidewalk, if you are gung-ho on putting a sidewalk in, put a sidewalk in on the north side and the pedestrian bike path on the south side?
Because of the speed of the person on the bicycle. You're much more apt to get a collision at a driveway on a rec path, the bicycle path, than you ever will with a pedestrian.
Okay, are there studies that support that?
Yes,
Or where
there are
where is
lots
that
of them.
coming from?
And if you want to look them up, you go to the Federal Highway Administration website. They have a whole section on their studies that they've done on pedestrian and bicycle issues. And the other one would be the National Highway Institute, which is where most of transportation studies are done.
So if bicyclists are allowed on sidewalks in the city of Stevens Point, why not just put a sidewalk on the north side?
Because the sidewalk isn't a very good place for a person to be on a bicycle. Although they're allowed, a 6-foot wide sidewalk is not a real safe place for a bicycle to be if there are pedestrians present. Because you get bicycle pedestrian collisions.
Which there will be a lot of. I can already see the disaster coming. I just hope I don't witness something. So as far as the children, and I understand the safe path, has any studies been done as to how many children actually walk to school, to Bannock every day?
I'd have to reference the Safe Routes to School plan, but I hadn't personally do that before this meeting.
Okay. And I have no idea. I work a lot. So based upon the amount of SUVs going up and down Walter Street and the lack of children that I see that are actually walking, I would be very curious as to why the money is being put into that if the children aren't accessing that.
Right, so there's also essentially induced demand where if you build sidewalks and multi-use paths, people will use them.
That's true.
I respectfully disagree. Kids don't take the bus. They don't want to take the bus because mommy and daddy are driving them. And for the most part, kids are not walking to school. That's,
Depends. which
Depends.
school
I mean, I
in our-
walk to
in
school
our
with my kids
district.
every
We have-
day, so.
We have,
I'll say.
we have one school that I'm aware of that we have over 80% walkers.
That's fantastic. They just don't happen to walk to Bannock.
Well, they might if there's a safe place. If I was a parent, I wouldn't want my child to be on the shoulder of a road. And this
True.
time of year, getting splashed with all sorts of junk off the road. If they're off the road and they're not susceptible to being splashed by all the cars and being adjacent to the traffic, then I might say, get out there and walk. It's better for your health.
Okay. And if I'm repeating myself, and then I'm going to step away because, so the sidewalk isn't going on the north side, which is the side of the street that Bannock School is on, so there's less crossing for children and better safety?
Children riding their bicycles to school is also a safety deal. You got a bicycle and pedestrian facility on the north side, and you have a pedestrian facility on the south side.
So-
Reasonable, and reasonable people can say, gee, I think it would be nice to flip it around, but I don't see any convincing reason why to do it, because you are going to have all the bicycle kids up there, and with less driveways, you'll have less problems. Driveways and bicycles are much worse than pedestrians and bicycles. Among other things, when you're walking, you have much more reliable brakes than a bicycle does. And so if you see something out of the corner of your eye, you can stop walking. You can't do that on a bicycle, even if you have disc brakes.
I'm not sure if that answered my question as far as why not put the sidewalk
I
on the
just
north
told you
side.
why, because of the number of driveways. And it's much safer if you have driveways not to have the bicycle. The less driveways you have on a bicycle path, the safer you are. If you have it's a much greater risk to bicyclists than it is to pedestrians, because pedestrians have the ability to stop quickly. Bicycles don't.
Did you say sidewalks are going on both sides?
There'll be a bicycle and pedestrian path on the north side and a sidewalk on the south side. And on the north side, there are far fewer driveways.
Correct.
One last question.
Yes.
You made a comment, if I could address you, sir, about we'll get notice when there's final resolution. Is that going to be our final written notice?
The final resolution is done actually after the improvement is put in, because then it actually will take the actual costs, which will then be assigned to each property. And then that is tabulated and sent to the council to vote on, the resolution assigning and using their authority to assess each of those properties, the value listed in that table. So at that point in time, the sidewalk as this assessable improvement would already be in when you get that final notice for the final resolution.
Thank you. Are there other questions or concerns from the audience? So do you need a motion from us, Scott, as far as moving forward?
Yes, I would be looking for some actionable item here as far as a delay, or, you know, whether or not if the commission just feels we will move forward as the current plans are laid out with the sidewalk this year. So
Okay.
yes.
You know, as a member of this commission, I want to make sure that the facility is put in. I am not concerned about the delay, because the delay has mostly to do with finance rather than anything else. And so I would move that we proceed with the construction of Walter Street, and the scheduling would leave up to Board of Public Works or Finance Committee.
Do you need clarification on, you want to clarify that,
I'm not-
Michael? or-
Yeah, I
I'm
think
saying
these other
that
are saying unless-
I approve the design as it is, but I have no feelings about whether it's done a year later or not. You know, because it's really, the reason you do it a year later is financial, and that's really outside our purview.
So, yeah, so if I'm on the resolution, you're saying that you're okay with a delay, so the whole thing is get in there, so we would,
Yes, you can do
so
the
another
delay or
body,
not.
could I weigh in on the delayed
Yes.
duration?
No one's going to hurt our
At that.
feelings by delaying it a year.
Okay.
So there's a motion on the table to approve the designs with delay or not.
Yes.
Is there a second?
Anybody else want a second? I'll second.
Alder Dugan, any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
No opposition, motion carries. Okay, moving on to item 6, the preliminary designs of the 2021 street reconstruction projects. And Scott, I don't know if you have any
Well,
materials
you'll
for us
notice
today?
that there isn't anything in your packet.
I'm just wondering,
And
Maria doesn't have anything?
And after we
Nope, okay.
talked about this and went through the agenda, and the reason for that is after we talked about the agenda, and knowing that there may be some implications for utility, especially related to stormwater, I went to the utility office, talked to the director, Lemke, there about some things, got him thinking about stuff, looking into things, and really what it ended up being is, I can't firmly tell you what we're going to do in '21. I know about where we're working, but related to some of the stormwater improvements may change the actual route of which we do. So what we're looking at doing is otherwise proposed right now is essentially 5th Avenue from 2nd to the east, and Washington Avenue also 2nd to the east, as well as then some of those blocks in between north and south to kind of finish up that area, and that gives us a good part of the north side completed. However, the order in which that work will be done is going to be heavily dependent on stormwater needs.
We're not
So-
allowed to close that door, ma'am. You have to leave it open. We're an open meeting.
Sorry.
That's enough, but it just has to be open.
Thank you.
So that's the area that we're really starting to do it, and some of it may otherwise change depending on the route. So I was hoping to get some feedback from them. I know utilities, they're trying to calculate some of the things to see if they can actually get stormwater where they go. They've got a couple of options that they've had their consultant model up for them before, which includes actually running stormwater on part of that out to the river through Bucol Park, and then some of it continues to come down through like the downtown area to Center Point. So they're trying to do some quick calculations to see how it might work out, and then send it to their consultant to model it out to see how that impacts it. Because ultimately the idea is that we maybe come up with a route. We may find that due to capacity issues and depth issues, however we slope, we may not get the improvement we're looking for. We may be able to get a pipe in the ground, but if it doesn't actually improve the situation and reduce the surcharging, we definitely don't want to go with that approach. So those would be the areas. And so if anyone wants to go look at that and start getting ideas, walk Washington, walk Fifth Avenue in that area, and look at those blocks north and south of each. And that's really kind of the area we're targeting over the next couple of years, starting 21, 22. Hopefully yet later, even in the spring here, I don't know how fast the modeling can get done with the consultant and stuff, but I'll have something more concrete to share with you and some ideas of kind of how that may break out. But hopefully that will get you started thinking if you're out that way. I mean, I understand, Trevor, sometimes you're over that way.
I might be.
Washington
I might be,
Avenue?
yeah.
Yeah, so if you happen to find your way over there, and you have some ideas about what is going on, some of the other needs that be, then yeah, we'll look at that. But otherwise, I apologize. I thought I had something to share, and I could share something with you, but it probably wouldn't be very accurate, so.
Won't be concrete, pun
Yeah,
intended.
right, so that's where we
okay.
unfortunately are with that.
Okay.
But hopefully I'll have something in the next few months.
Next few months, okay. So we'll bring it back to the commission for possible initial review and discussion.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you, Scott. Any questions of Scott before you move on to the next item? Questions from the audience? Okay, seeing none, move on. All right, so item 7, summary of Portage County Bicycle and Pedestrian Plan recommendations. So those that might be newer to one of our meetings, the county had approved a bicycle and pedestrian plan in 2014, and then the city adopted that plan in 2015, and that's when the previous version of this commission was formed. The plan is huge, it's robust. In the packet, which is online, as well as a physical copy here, staff did a great job just summarizing all the recommendations as they pertain to the city. So also they marked off what was complete already, ongoing or pending. And what the awesome thing is, I'll just mention quickly, is that it's cool to see things that are already complete, as well as pending or sometimes ongoing. And if you were to look at, no offense to any other municipalities, but if you were to look at other ones, I don't think they're quite so far ahead as we are in Stevens Point. So with that, we'll pressure other municipalities, we'll pressure the county to do more. But in other words, as far as our year is concerned, this is a summary to look at, again, what we want to do as a commission moving forward this year. And obviously, a lot of things dictate what we prioritize. Also, we did come up with a model last year, and with feedback from staff and others, it may be a little bit too complicated or might be too robust to really use. So with that, are there items of discussion or questions about the bike ped plan? Commissioner O'Meara?
I was especially gratified that, in fact, we're getting some stuff done on the enforcement side, which traditionally is the harder one to do.
It is.
And some of the things you won't know whether they're doing,
Right.
because they're not going to tell you whether they're enforcing. But I think that the putting out the automated speed tracking equipment and in areas where we have pedestrians, that's really helpful. And the other enforcement one that's really near and dear to my heart is snow and ice removal.
Oh, gosh.
And I think especially in the last week, what's really important is getting through the windrows to allow people to get out to the street. Because if we don't do it at the end of the block, what they end up doing is getting out the first driveway and walking in the street, and that's no good for anybody. So I think that and there has been enforcement going on with it, but I think that even more important is people should know there are people in this community, and we don't think about it, who don't have access to an automobile. Anyone under age 16 doesn't have access to an automobile, and people much older than me shouldn't have.
Point well taken.
And so I think that that's really important. I'm glad that we're working on that, and I'm glad that we have kept up on it.
Yes, Commissioner.
Yeah, I would like to echo what Commissioner O'Meara said, but I also want to encourage more enforcement, because I am a walker, as lots of people are, and there are walkers in my neighborhood, and boy, not just my neighborhood, but there are some serious violations with snow and ice removal. There was a time when the city had enough, I think, enforcement staff to go out and get on it right away. That happened in the 70s and 80s, I know. But one example, I walked from, on 2nd Street, I walked from 2nd Street Auto, it's on the corner of Maria and 2nd, down to Emmy J's, which is, about half a mile down maybe at that most. Almost no sidewalk was cleared. And I ran into 2 different mail carriers in that one section. And I said, how do you manage this? He said, oh, really, really carefully, because they're walking that thing. And then I met the next one, I said the same thing. And I said to both of them, it might be helpful if your postal exec, forget what their names are. Postmaster has a little talk with the city. Yeah, I was sad about that. I mean, I had to be careful. They had to be careful. And the same thing is happening out in my area, District 8. Some of them are really, really good, but a number of them you can count on not shoveling or taking care of the ice. So as much enforcement as we can add to this, I'm in favor.
It has been my experience that if you call in, the city has been sending people out.
Great.
And I think that that's the message. We can't expect somebody to hop into their SUV and go up and down all the miles of street in the city.
We do have people who do that.
Yes, but we can't expect them to do it every day and after every snowstorm. But we can expect that they would reply when we say there is a concern, because there are sidewalks that are more critical, and those would theoretically be the ones that someone would call up about. But it's been my experience that the city is very good at, Maria has something to say.
Maria.
So the Community Development Department are the enforcers for the
Yes.
snow and ice. And we really don't, as you mentioned, have enough staff to just hop in vehicles and go out and start just patrolling the area. Typically, we go based on a schedule of complaints. So a lot of our enforcement are based on residential complaints, and oftentimes, some areas that we don't go through often, typically far out on the east end of town or the west side, where we don't really have sidewalks there, but most of the time it's centered around the downtown area, the university area, where there's a lot of pedestrians on a daily basis, around schools, wherever people just congregate, around businesses. But yeah, it's helpful when residents call in, because that's kind of takes us to certain places we may not routinely visit. And then we can kind of start, recognizing that that might be an area that we should be going to. But oftentimes, they're right, we really don't have the staff to just patrol, because aside from snow in the winter, which is huge, we still are dealing with ongoing code enforcement cases, sometimes a lot more severe in terms of rental issues and things like that.
Thank you. So
Yeah, thanks a lot.
just to reiterate, if you do see an issue, especially if it's blocking kids or other people from just getting from A to B on the sidewalk, please do contact community development, because they can help enforce that.
Neighborhood Improvement Coordinator, I would think, yeah, who's a part of community development.
There's an item on page 17, I think should be changed from complete to ongoing, because that's applying for the League of American Bicyclists bicycle-friendly status. And really, the city should be doing that either every year or every couple of years. So that should be ongoing, I think. We've done that before. We're actually a bicycle-friendly community, currently a bronze level. So doing that on a revolving basis is a good idea. Any questions or comments from the audience regarding our bicycle pedestrian plan? And this is, again, just the summary of what's been going on and what we're up to as a commission as well as a city. Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to the next item. I will mention we'll bring this back to the table probably next month. So give yourself a chance to start looking at priorities in your areas and interests. So, all right, great. Moving on to item 8 with a staff update. Our typical staff update from Kyle is not here. Scott, do you have anything you want to update us with?
Really just one thing, which is, well, actually I guess 2 things. One is otherwise a plug for Business 51. We're still putting together, we'll have a presentation from AECom on Monday night at the Board of Public Works preceding council on public involvement. So just to try to stir anyone, especially if you have a business or a residence along that corridor, or maybe represent a special interest group, feel free to contact me about maybe becoming part of our stakeholders group, or at least otherwise being involved. And the second thing is sidewalk continuation is nearing final design. And so haven't otherwise set a date, have a number of things that there's going on at the moment, but we should be holding a public informational meeting on that here, hopefully in maybe 3-ish weeks or so, maybe the very beginning of March as we prepare to get that out for bid. But getting near the end, we're making a few final improvements.
And this is for 2020?
This would be the 2020 sidewalk
Okay.
continuation program. So,
And then regarding that, a quick question for 2021. Is that something you're currently looking at and you wanted to discuss with the commission?
Yes, he
Well,
is.
Okay.
It is. I think I had mentioned otherwise some time ago, we're just kind of getting into the completing kind of the draft, I would call it, of a sidewalk prioritization model. I know this is something we've been talking about for a while now. And so we're finally getting all that data put into there, so we're kind of looking at that to try to help us. So I haven't picked exactly what we're otherwise going to do yet. We're kind of looking at that as far as part of it will otherwise hinge on, how we want to work, even now on, Walter Street.
Sure.
Into that and how that might grow and expand, things for a future project out there. So have not identified that specifically, but hopefully this summer we would probably have our model up and running and be looking to get that all sorted out at that time.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments for staff or from the audience? Okay. Seeing none, that exhausts our agenda. We're adjourned at 4:23. Thanks for sticking around, everybody, and thanks for your feedback.
A video of this meeting is available for viewing on the city's website, stevenspoint.com/videos.